All right, so first thing I gotta say is thank you guys for inviting me and Olivia. And I'm just like so excited. I've been listening for 2 days and just like a little kid on the baseball team bench, I'm ready to get out there and play with you guys. So the benefit of me waiting for 2 days is I got to hear everything everyone says. So I'm gonna try to do the thing Peter said and integrate all these different awesome perspectives into communicating an even more powerfully, effective message because of that. So. Real quick, so my thing is the Hero Training School. It's a place that I've created online. Matt just mentioned that one of the things people do, they have in common that they take these high risks and they jump on the subway tracks. They sometimes say that I think Wesley Autry said that when he was a kid, he had done that before. He had he had hidden under the tracks or something like that with his friends. So they had this interesting training and like a lot of firemen and policemen have had practice intervening in risky situations, right? So my thing is, I want to prepare people for those big moments. And I found a really important reason to be heroic and to practice every day, and that is what Sylvia was talking about. You're living your life, you're having experiences in social groups. And so what better way than to practice intervening by learning to live heroically. And what that means is to be vulnerable, just like a couple of you guys have done by saying things about yourself, and it's a social risk because we might reject you for having told us the truth, right? And we might not like you for what you said, but you said it because you were demonstrating love for yourself, and I would add that part of heroism is demonstrating love for others. And this means telling the truth, being honest, right? So I drew a little picture here in the middle that says heroic life management style. So this is my conceptualized theory that I hope all of you PhD researchers will help to prove or disprove or make it better. And that is that people who have developed a heroic approach and response to situations in general are more likely to jump on the subway tracks. So in other words, 30 people walking by the guy that's laying on the train tracks are not all bystanders. In other words, they're all standing idly by, but some of them don't intervene because they don't care about people, right? Others don't intervene because they're afraid. Others don't intervene because they don't have agency, these social skills and knowledge and understanding that they should get involved. So there's lots of different things that we're going to talk about, and I'm doing this for you global thinkers out there. I'm a detail guy, so some people like to get right to the point. The point I'm getting at is that the spiral thing is there again for me too, that we're all going up and down this spiraling experience, right? So for me, I work at a supermax prison in Maine with men who have been convicted of violent crimes like murder, rape, child molesting, and they also have been diagnosed with a mental health disorder like schizophrenia, bipolar, stuff like that. And I facilitate groups. So, but out of the 30 guys I work with, only one of them is really what I would kind of describe as being stuck in that villainous state, which I'll get into later. But a lot of them have all these other management styles. And what I found is that when it comes to getting involved and creating a positive change, there's at least like 23 different characters that I found that are metaphors for habits that you can develop and so in other words, these are also places that people get stuck. And then once you break out of these roles, you can cross from the roles into vulnerability and then end up living a heroic life. So in other words, to practice taking risks, you're going to live vulnerably, which is a risk to be yourself all the time, right? And the reason you're doing this is because you're an individual in an environment, not just with chairs and tables, but with social interactions. And the things that you do are affecting me, right? And I'm affecting you. We're influenced, our sphere of influence, as Peter said. So you are not only a participant in this environment, you are also a gardener of this environment. So this is for me what heroism means. It's a process of being and of becoming and also of doing, right? So I want to walk you through a hero training that I would give to someone over time. I'm going to condense it, and so that maybe you'll be more likely to intervene to improve situations for yourself and others, as Sylvia said, and thereby to facilitate experiences in which you and others can reach your full potential in life. So, I'll grab the thing here. Let's see. How do I do this, Olivia?
Left, right.
Okay. Oops. There we go. So, one quick disclaimer before I get into this. You know how in like Psych 101 classes, if the teacher talks about bipolar, everybody thinks they have bipolar? Or if they talk about diabetes, everybody thinks they have diabetes. So I'm going to talk about all these dysfunctional roles that we can get stuck on in life, especially if we've been traumatized. And we are now terrified of vulnerability, because vulnerability is where we were when someone hurt us. So sometimes we get stuck in these little stages or these like off-ramps on the road towards heroic living. And so I don't want you to get too critical of yourself. I can tell you right away that I have struggled with every single one of these things. And most recently, there's the savior role and the dictator, a couple of those type of things, which I'll get into later. So don't be too hard on yourself. I'm not talking about you personally. I'm just trying to provide a script that someone might look at as a frame of reference to know where they're at on the road to heroic living. So first thing is, we were all born to be heroic. How do I know that? Because it's the only way to reach your full potential. That's what I'm advocating. How do I know that? Because villains exist in the world. Take it from me. I work at a supermax prison with guys who have to spend 23 hours a day locked in a cell, and they get 1 hour to walk in a dog cage, literally. And they have the classic stereotypical scary look. So these are guys who would like to dominate and exploit you. And they look like this in the movies, right? And some of them are real characters. But often we, in our PC culture, we don't want to acknowledge that there are people out there that actually would like to dominate and exploit you. And so we need to be aware of that, because they stand between you and reaching your full potential. So you were born into a world where not everybody wants you to succeed at life. In fact, some people would prefer it if you did nothing except allow them to dominate and exploit you for your resources, okay? This is common in like domestic violence. Some exploitative corporations do this to their employees, etc. Villains are transformational leaders, just like heroes. They initiate and sustain a course of action. They're agentic. So that's great. Villains are really close to switching over to the good side if they could make some different choices, but here's the thing. Villains don't value community. So this is my goal, is that we all are equally empowered, and we're also agentic. We can initiate and sustain a course of action, and we work together. So it's a teamwork orientation. That's my idea of community, where we can have that. When you have a teamwork situation, you can have the experience of community. Now, villains prefer a oppressive social group structure, right? And I threw up these characters to show you from the movies. Think of Voldemort in the middle there as being the classic male villain. He destroys Hogwarts physically, right, and threatens to physically harm people. Right next to him is Dolores Umbridge in the pink, who hurts Harry Potter without even touching him. It's a representation of psychological abuse. So these are two characters that want to dominate and exploit. All around them is people you might remember from the movies who play different dysfunctional and toxic roles, which perpetuate oppression as an experience. You could call this a life exploitation system or a dominator hierarchy. I call it the wolf pack social group structure. Problem, of course, with the wolf pack is seen in this picture is when someone tries to dominate you, you end up resenting them and eventually fight back, and this whole cycle keeps perpetuating, right? So, what's it like in a dominator hierarchy? Not fun. Things like domestic violence happen, mobbing or bullying in the workplace, apathy, people not caring about each other, crime, forcing people, taking things away from them, school, classroom bullying, right? All different ways that the social group is structured to support oppression. This is one of the things that happen. Specifically, on the individual participant level, in the environment, you're going to feel things like inequality of value, fear, coercion, distrust, instability, lack of support, insufficiency, oppression, deception, imbalance, hopelessness, anxiety, and injustice. And those are the opposite of need satisfaction, right? We all have in common the common good. If we think about what all us humans have in common. The problem, of course, is that prolonged exposure to these toxic social environments can lead to disconnection. From what? Another way of saying it is moral disengagement. It's when a person disconnects from their conceptual awareness of their emotional and their social experience. They stop wanting to hear about the problem. They pretend they don't see it. They don't want to discuss it, right? We all know people that have done this. And this is why mindfulness is so important, like Patrick was talking about, because you need to be perceptually aware of what you're going through if you're going to be able to have any positive influence. Obviously, if you are experiencing those things after disconnecting and you're morally disengaged from your social experience, you're more likely to do what? You're going to go out and treat people like objects because you're treating yourself like an object. So you don't want to do that. What do I know about that? Well, just like Sylvia, I grew up in a life exploitation system. My dad played the villain role, and all the other grown-ups enabled him to stay in charge by choosing to stay stuck in adolescent ways of being, right? So it makes sense for kids to operate in certain ways, like not wanting to intervene, but for grown-ups, it doesn't make sense. The irony, of course, was that I was an adolescent who was stuck in the parentified role, just like Sylvia. So my big thing is, when did I personally become interested in heroism? I think, without knowing it consciously, was in 1992. What I went through was, my dad was a minister for 14 years. He had a church of 500 people. He had a radio show, big house. Problem was, he also had some mental health problems, and he was physically abusive to my mom and to us kids. So in 1992, I was watching Star Search with my younger brother and two sisters that were younger, and watching a TV show there. Anybody remember Star Search? It's an American thing, yeah. When my dad asked my mom to go buy him some beer, and she said no. And so I remember hearing my dad throw a cup of hot coffee in my mom's face and drag her by the hair across the room, where he proceeded to threaten to kill her with a pair of scissors. And so in that moment, I decided that I was not going to run and hide anymore. And so I watched the doorknob of the door when my dad was doing this, and I waited and I said to myself, I want my dad to know that I know, right? So sure enough, eventually the doorknob jiggles, my dad comes out, and I ran before he saw me, and I hid. So the reason that happened, I think, is because I was a kid, right? But I'm not a kid anymore, and so one of the things I do is intervene all the time, as much as I can, because I know what happens when good people do nothing. What happens when good people do nothing? Evil happens, persists, yes. So you guys are good people. You can also be heroic people. How do you do this? What's the solution? You're going to take personal responsibility for creating the situational conditions in which you and others can succeed at life. How do you do that? You're going to manage impact in 3 key ways. Move up a developmental ladder towards hero status. Optimize situations for life success, live in the moment. And you're going to manage progress towards your personal goals by overcoming hurdles, pushing through, hanging in there, helping people, right? Being brave, getting the move on. I'll give you some examples of people who've already done this. Martin Luther King Jr., Superman, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Katniss Everdeen. Got a bunch more, but what they did is they intervened to improve the situation and facilitated an experience, right? Equality of value, safety, autonomy, hope. This is what you can do every day. These are 4 basic human mental health needs, 4 aspects of the good life. So how do you increase your hero status to get better at that? You're going to learn how to recognize and break out of dysfunctional roles. First thing, this guy right here, I love him. He's from the Hangover movie. The problem is he's a little bit too much of a party animal. So he's not really paying attention to what's going on wrong in his circumstances, right? And he ends up getting in lots of trouble. So you got to have an attitude of sobriety. You got to have an internal locus of responsibility. Unlike Eeyore, you got to know that you can act, you can get involved. And you got to choose to get involved socially, right? If you don't, we're going to say you're like a bystander. Once you get involved, you want to do it in a way that's sociocentric so you can get that teamwork thing happening, right? You don't want to be selfish. want to have agency rather than entitlement. You don't want to have this false sense that everybody owes you something, because they don't. You have to earn it. You don't want to get stuck in the mean girl syndrome where you objectifying people, others, and want to compete against them. You want to appreciate people. So that way you'll be more likely to collaborate with them rather than try to coerce their compliance, right? In those ways I described earlier. You gotta have self-esteem rather than hating yourself like Snape does for failing to save Harry Potter's mother. You gotta have courage. Remember Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump? Rather than be heroic himself, he just criticizes the hero constantly until he figures out how to make peace with God and become his own hero, get on his own hero journey. Want to support people that are heroic rather than sabotaging them, right? Two heroes are better than one. Once you start making changes and you have a standard that is common good, you got to make sure that you are practicing what you preach. That's moral authority. Don't just have this moral smugness like Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Then you got to have free thinking, right? You can't. Once again, we can't escape vulnerability by finding refuge in groupthink. Otherwise, you end up like the clone guys here. You're just programmed by one person. Once you've discovered your autonomy and individuality, you got to be transparent. Don't pretend you care if you don't. That's what we said about the fake heroes, right? You got to confront problems. Mr. Fudge, the commissioner from Batman, they never confront the bad guys. So this is why I call them the politician. They don't want to disrupt their approval rating. Once you're involved, you got to initiate rather than hesitate, right? Ron, in the beginning of Harry Potter, doesn't believe in himself. So he's wondering what to do while Harry's already zooming to solve the problem. This guy's from the movie Kick-Ass. He gets involved without having really any training or knowledge. He ends up getting his ass kicked. So you have to have a legitimate claim to the turf, or else you're going to be called a vigilante. Another guy that's on the good guy spectrum but is actually being bad is Instructor Hartman from Full Metal Jacket. He wants people to do well, so he controls them. This is the opposite of the clone, right? The clone wants to be told what to do. This guy wants to tell you what to do. Next level is the savior. You think people are incompetent because they're just not doing what you want, and so you end up doing it for them, right? Just let me solve your problems. You don't want to do that. You want to try to facilitate and coach. Remember Uncle Jesse from Full House? He was always trying to pay off the kids to stop acting out. I'll give you $5 if you stop yelling. So he sets limits, but he doesn't know how to hold his ground when people put pressure on him. So rather than giving in and appeasing, you just want to acknowledge that, yes, I set a limit, for example, and I'm not going to let you bully me. You don't want to rescue people from personal responsibility like Keanu Reeves in Devil's Advocate. He knows that's a villain, and he's still trying to get him off the hook. This is what my mom's role was back when my dad was being a villain, right? So if you do that too much, you might end up being a martyr and acting like you're going to help everybody when you're giving yourself up when you're really in ways that you shouldn't be. So if the emperor wants everyone to do everything for them, this person is the one that's enabling the emperor to stay the emperor because they want to do everything for you. You guys have limits, right? This is sort of the opposite of the villain. The villain wants to coerce. The minion is allowing themselves to be coerced out of fear. So you can't be enmeshed. You got to be two separate people to be a team. If you let people push you around too much, you're going to end up like Hamish from the Hunger Games. He has a reason to be involved. He could be really good, but he sidelines himself. He's the opposite of the fool, right? So the fool was down here. He's involved, but he shouldn't be involved. Whereas the has-been should be involved, but they're not. So my point is that just like the whole Zen Buddhist find the middle way thing, these are all polar opposites. The guys down on one side of the spiral ladder, they have too little of an attribute. The ones on the top here have too much, right? So you got to have balance. Let's see, what else? So how do heroes improve situations? They build up the situation.